Hi there, Emer Burke here, and welcome to Tea with a Druid 392, brought to you by the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And just let me see where people are from. So, a very cold, chilly Ripon, Illinois, USA, North Germany, snowy, New Jersey, County Durham, Southern Germany, Cumbria, lovely. Where else are people from? Crystal Lake, Illinois, Ottawa, Canada, Italy. Hello, Carla. Denmark, Barkham, Sussex, Missouri in the US. Beautiful. Netherlands, Prince Edward Island, Canada, Devon, snowy Maine. Wonderful. Seattle. Okay, Ambridge. New Zealand, Northamptonshire, California. Wonderful. North Carolina, Holland, grey London. It's very grey here. I'm in Kilkenny. Very, very grey here to Derbyshire. Glossop, is that what it's called? Wyoming, and New Zealand again, Birmingham. Wonderful. Somebody asks, snow everywhere. Northern California, brilliant. The Sierra Nevadas, wonderful. Anyway, you're all very, very welcome to this tea with a druid. And I've just been thinking, we're coming up to Imbolc, and normally that for me is a kind of, a time of hope when the first shoots are coming up through the landscape and bringing with us that bit of hope. And then the days are getting longer. We have an expression in Irish, the days get longer by Cush came Quilly, a cock's footstep. That's how gradually the days get longer. And right now I'm not hopeful. I've been very sad. I've been very tearful when I'm looking at my news feeds and what's happening. And, it's like we're living and I don't know how you all feel, in a time of lawlessness. And what it seems to be like a pandemic all over the world. The institutions that we once trusted, or that I trusted, maybe being very, very naive, with the UN or the European Court of Human Rights or the International Criminal Court, the EU, WHO, all of those institutions that I once had faith in, that, order could prevail. And I know we've always had, conflicts and wars, but then we've had times of peace, and you think, okay, reason is prevailing in the world, and nations have gotten together and they say, okay, this will never happen again. And now it's increasing more and more and more. And what are we doing about it? What's happening? And when, in so-called democratic countries where the rule of law has prevailed and we regard ourselves as beautifully civilized, and in those countries where human rights have been wiped away, what's happening? So the early legal system in Ireland, going way, way back, it was the Brehon Laws, and they were used in Ireland, before Christianity, right up until the 1600s, until they were replaced by the penal laws, which were imposed on us by the English. So I decided that I would go in and look at the Brehon Laws. So I found Fergus Kelly's book, Early Irish Law Texts, to have a look and see, I don't know what I was looking for, some kind of hope, or I hear somebody, Sydney Weaver, trying to hold on to love amidst the fear here in US. And yes, exactly, so sad that those you've trusted have turned their backs on for greed. Sometimes it's like in a dystopia, but last Saturday we were in a demo with lights and candles called The Hope Shines Brightly. It was heartwarming. I'm going to come back to that. And in those, I found the section on offences, and I came across a piece on bystanders and onlookers. And I found that there's an actual crime called kinsula, which literally means the crime of the eye. Kin is the modern Irish word meaning a word for guilt or a transgression or a crime, and sul is an eye. So, and what it is, another word for it is arshak, What it is where somebody observes a crime and does nothing to prevent it, which means they're culpable. And it so and it's one of the things that would debase a lord and their family on the grounds that everybody who looks on at an offence consents to it. And I found this really, really interesting. And there are 3 levels of arkshoe. And one is where the shellock, who's the onlooker, that's an old word for that, as Nimi has, turning a blind eye, who instigates the crime but doesn't commit it themselves, accompanies the doer of the crime, and then exults in the result, and they pay a full penalty. And the second level of arkshoe is a person who doesn't instigate the crime, but accompanies the doer of the crime and exults in the crime. And then the third level of arkshoe is where there is a bystander, an onlooker, who does nothing to stop it, and they pay quarter the penalty. And I'm just thinking of why is nobody doing anything? And I'm talking about, I mean, a lot of people are, in the sense a lot of individuals are doing that. But when you have big institutions and you have states, corporations, countries not doing anything about it, standing by because of fear of the big bully. I was struck by Mark Carney's speech at Davos recently, where he referred to Václav Havel's analogy of the shopkeeper's window. And Václav Havel, if you don't know, was the first and last president of then Czechoslovakia. And Václav Havel had used this analogy when he was talking about the USSR and their power. And it was that the shopkeepers would put a sign in their window, workers of the world unite. And this is what kept people adhering to, I suppose, communistic dogma. And even though the people didn't believe it, they still complied with it in order to keep safe. And that is what maintained the power of the Soviet Union. And as people stopped doing that, no longer putting their signs in the window, that began the decline of the USSR. So he says now that today, states, corporations, countries, the sign is American hegemony, and they're not standing up to the bully. And it's really interesting that people, mad kings and emperors, have always been in power because there have been people who complied and complied with it. They were complicit in that person's power. And I remember, and bullies are scary. You know, they shout louder and they threaten. And if you believe all of that, it's a scary thing. And I remember when I was 8, we used to play out on the road in those days back in ancient Ireland, when there was very little traffic. You could be on the street unsupervised. But I remember there was another child who was 5.5. That means 2.5 years younger than me, who terrified me, who shouted and roared and screamed. Never hit me, but I was really intimidated by this person, this small child. And I was thinking one day, and it occurred to me, wait a second, I'm 8. Somebody 2.5 years younger than me can't bully me. They can't control me. They can't scare me. And a light just went on in my head. And after that, I was no longer afraid of this child. And I think lights need to go on in our heads, our individual heads, but the heads of the big players in the world. So, okay, and somebody says it's hard when you have family and children or something to lose and the bullies have guns. Absolutely. I'm not saying any of this is easy. European nations are selling or threatening to sell shares in the US jet to keep Trump in check. Hopefully that will happen. It's about time that they said, okay, we're not playing this game anymore. It was a famous, I don't know, psychiatrist, psychologist, Eric Byrne, and he wrote a book called Games People Play. And he looked at the interactions between people and how people get stuck in a game. There's a a common one with client and therapist, please help me. And the therapist comes up with an idea, no, that's not going to work. It's called the yes, but game, and you keep playing it. Or couples do it, taking 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and playing a dance. But when the game is named, you can no longer play it. And it's when people stand up to the bully and say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to stand up. The hard thing is, it's hard to do this alone. And we need to do that in solidarity. And what we need to reclaim the power of the righteous. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Absolutely. Now, and I'm an American living in the deep South, I can say confidently that the light within this community is most of what keeps me showing up, not allowing fatigue and resistance to take over. We're governed by bullies. Still, the thing is, reclaim sovereignty, call the bullies bluff. Absolutely. So I'm so impressed and so in awe of the people who've been protesting for the last number of years all over the world, not just in their own countries about the human rights abuses, but for elsewhere. So in Ireland, we've had them every week since October 7th. Been going on in London, other places for what's been happening in Palestine and Ukraine and South Sudan and Afghanistan. And please don't get annoyed at me if I haven't remembered every conflict in the world. But you know what I mean. It's all over the place. And how they stand up. And now more recently in Iran, where people are protesting in their hundreds, if not thousands. And then in the US, in Minneapolis. And I've more know what's going on in Minneapolis rather than Iran, just simply because more is coming into my feed. But communities getting out there and rallying around in solidarity, supporting their neighbours, their community members with their whistles, their food, looking after childcare centres or whatever it is, standing out and following those perpetrators of that horrendous violence. And I was heartbroken and in tears so often looking at my feeds and then hoping, trying not to get into despair. And then I read articles by decent journalists who actually say what it is. So there are individuals calling out these people, and I would ask and hope that nations, corporations, and states will stand up, call the bluff. Generally, there's one mad king, one mad emperor, and the rest are colluding. If people, the majority of people can stand up, and any change, it happens from the bottom. I remember I lived in Lesotho in the late 80s into the early 90s when the apartheid regime was in full swing in South Africa. And Lesotho is an independent kingdom surrounded by South Africa. And I was living there when Mandela was released from prison. And I left just a month after apartheid was going to be officially abolished. Now, apartheid was removed in South Africa, not because the leaders of the whites said, oh, do you know what, we've been a bit unfair. I think we should hand over rights to the black people because they're the majority here anyway. No, it came from the black consciousness movement. It came from the ground. And when I see people protesting on the ground, I'm in awe. Sadly, people have lost their lives. You've had, Renee Good, and you've had that man, the nurse. You've had babies taken, and I haven't got all the names, so forgive me for that. Not to mention in Palestine, the journalists, the doctors, the paramedics, the nurses, young children taken. So many people because they stood up. But that is something we should not give up. And I think videos of the community in Minnesota singing for their neighbours is quite literally a beacon of light. And Lisa says, I've been resisting for decades, actually my entire life. These times are very scary for this child of Holocaust survivors working to keep forwarding. I'm sorry, Lisa. And Mandela's autobiography is a true eye-opener. What courage. This is a model for others. I read his autobiography, The Long Road to Freedom, and I was blown away by somebody who was in prison for 27 years, did not come out bitter and twisted, and said, we are all Africans, didn't go in for revenge. And I think a bit like Martin Luther King, just a wonderful model for how we can be. So what has this got to do with Druids? I think we are, as Anne says, but it's so reaffirming because it reaches around the world with shared values and spiritual awareness. So grateful. I'm like, you've just preempted what I wanted to say, Anne, that what we have as Druids, we have over 30,000 members, some say 37,000, well, since we started, all over the world, all nationalities, all spiritual backgrounds. I like to describe the order as a rich salad of so many ingredients, so diverse, each with its own color and texture and taste and seasoning and dressing. We're not a puree. We don't think the same. However, we gather in a circle, maybe a visual circle here tonight, or when we meet in groves and sea groups for ceremonies, sharing values with a shared intent. No hierarchy. There's no hierarchies in a circle where we are there as peers, sharing love, solidarity, protection, joined by an awareness and an appreciation of the interconnectedness of all beings, a love of nature, a love of the planet. And what we have is, a rich set of resources to keep us together in solidarity and to keep us rooted and grounded in the earth. We can get our roots right down into the earth, connecting with the roots of other trees, engaging with the mycelial networks, spreading light, love, peace, strength, solidarity, hope all around the world so that we don't loot it. And Ben says, bullies need their victims to feel helpless in order to play their game. But support and solidarity exposes bullies for the insecure paper tigers that they are. That's absolutely it. Bullies are not grounded. They don't have their roots down deep in the earth. When you have a sense of where you belong, and I think you can set down roots anywhere you are. It doesn't mean you own the land. It doesn't mean you've colonized the land. But wherever you are, you need to put down your roots. Plants do that all the time. And when we are rooted, and when our egos are strong, and I'm talking about big egos are weak. They're like balloons. You just one little prick and they blow. A strong ego is small and intact and doesn't need to. Yeah, a strong ego is somebody who stands in their own power, and it's power with their circle, not power over. Bullies are all about power over. So we have that, and we can stand in solidarity with each other. So we're coming up to Imbolc next week, and fighting for freedom comes in many forms to bring peace. Absolutely. My sacred grove and light body practice has been critical in keeping me grounded when the news is so overwhelming. Absolutely. So now, coming up to Imbolc. So, and this is our third year where Bridget, the goddess and saint, has been given her own day. So it's now a public holiday in Ireland. And this has been mind-blowing. When people were lobbying for it, there was always a fear it would turn into another paddy, like another St. Patrick's Day with plastic paddies all over the world, painting rivers green and shamrocks and leprechauns and just using it as an opportunity for a piss-up. It's not. This is really interesting. Every village and town in Ireland has something to mark Bridget. Either goddess or saint, nobody's fighting over it. Bringing in traditions, remembering them, working with the Bridget's cross, working with her Chris, her broth of healing. And it's so beautiful and reassuring. And okay. I feel quite uprooted, to be honest, Andrew. I still hope for peace, even though a fire burns within. Deep breathing is crucial, absolutely. So I'm going to invite you now to join me in a meditation. So if you'd like, just close your eyes and just become aware of the floor beneath your feet, and the ceiling above you and the walls around you. And just to begin to focus on your breath, breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. With every in-breath, there are possibilities. Possibilities for love and peace and healing. And with every out-breath, there's a letting go. A letting go of what no longer serves you. Breathing in and breathing out. And I invite you to allow your awareness of your physical body in the room to fade and become aware of yourself out in a green landscape, and you see ahead of you the forest. And you walk towards that forest. Beautiful trees, green leaves. You feel the trees welcoming you. And as you come to the edge, as if by magic, the trees part and you see before you a path. And you feel the invitation, the call to enter the forest and walk along that pathway. Feeling the earth beneath you and the sky above you and the trees around you. And as you walk, you become aware of the earth's light body beneath your feet. Becoming aware of your roots and your connectedness right down deep into the earth. And with every breath and every footstep, you draw that energy of the earth right up through your feet, into your legs, right up into your torso. And sensing it or feeling it spiraling right through your being. And as you continue to walk along that path, you look up, skyward, up to the sky. Maybe it's daylight and you can see the blue sky, or it's nighttime. But always in the woods at night, you can still see the sky. It's always lighter than the darkness of the forest. And draw down that sky energy right through your crown chakra, right down into your body. And feeling it spiraling around inside your heart space. And being aware of the energy of the earth meeting the energy of the sky, filling every cell of your being. You continue walking, aware of the smells, the textures, the colours, the sounds as you walk through the woods, until you come to a clearing. And in the centre of this clearing, there is a well and there is a fire. And as you come up close, you notice that you are in a circle of fellow druids. Cloaked in robes of different styles. And you are one of them. You are part of this grove of druids. And you get a sense of well-being, a sense of peace and a sense of harmony. And then she comes, you become aware of somebody entering into the circle. And it's Bridget, goddess of fire and water, flame and well. You see her long flowing red hair, and she's wearing a red gown and a green cloak. And in her eyes, they're fiery, but full of love and healing and caring. Bridget, goddess of fire and water, flame and well, the goddess of healing, the goddess of poets, the goddess of Imas, the goddess of smiths. You become aware that in your hand you are holding a chalice, and you watch as Bridget walks towards that well. And there is a vessel beside the well, and she dips it into the well. And then she comes around to each druid in this circle, to each one of us, pouring some of that sacred healing water into our chalice. And she speaks some words of healing and blessing to each one of us. And you watch as she comes to you, and she stands before you and looks deep into your eyes and pours the well water into your cup and you listen to what she has to say to you. When she's gone around the whole circle, she nods to you and indicates that you take of that water. And you sip that water, waters of healing, the waters of peace, the waters of solidarity and tranquility, and the waters of strength and truth. And you feel those qualities filling every cell of your body, feeling the power of the water, feeling the power of Bridget within your very being. And then you notice Bridget walking towards the fire, and she lays her hands out in front of the flames. And with that, what emerges from the fire is a brosage, a fiery arrow. She sends that arrow around the circle through the hearts of every one of us. This fire, this fiery arrow coming through our hearts, a fire of love, a fire of strength, a fire of courage, a fire of truth, coming through each one of us until every one of us is filled with the fire of Bridget. And then she takes her place at the edge of the circle again and hands one edge of her cloak to somebody, and then begins to walk sunwise around the circle on the outside, wrapping us in her cloak. And the magic of Bridget's cloak, it is infinite. When she asked the King of Leinster for some land many years ago, she said, "All I ask is give me a piece of land that my cloak will cover." This he agreed to, and when she laid her cloak on the ground, began to stretch out and expand further and further. And this is what she does as she wraps us in her cloak of healing, her brat bríde, the brat of healing, transformation. And let us spend a few moments within the embrace of Bridget and her cloak, her healing water and her healing fire. And now Bridget begins to move counter-sunwise around the circle, reclaiming her cloak. She comes back. And it is time to leave this clearing, this circle of druids, but holding the embrace of Bridget in our hearts, her healing waters, her healing fire. We nod to each other, bid farewell to Breach, and then she's gone. And your awareness of the other druids in the clearing have faded, and you begin to walk back down that path, but carrying all that you have gained in this meditation with you. And you begin to come out through the forest, out in that grassy area, and you allow your awareness of the forest and the grove to fade as you become more aware of your body, your physical body, in front of your computer again, feeling the floor beneath your feet, the ceiling above you, and the walls around you. If you like to wiggle your fingers and toes, and when you're ready, with a big deep breath, open your eyes. So, it's time to finish our tea. And I just wish you all blessings of Imbolc, Banachtaí Imbolc, Banachtaí Bríd, Díobse. And may we, as we continue on, as the days get longer, and we see the snowdrops and whatever flowers that grow in your landscape coming up, symbols of hope. May we walk in peace, may we walk in beauty, and may we be safe. And not to let the bullies inside our head. Have Bridget, have courage, have each other. We're not alone, however anyone might like to think we are. So until I'll be back again in a month with another tea, and I will see you, for those of you who are joining on the hearth, for biscuits. And you say this is what you needed. It's what I needed as well. So I think it's these reminders that we're not alone. And I shall see you on the other side. Until I meet here on this platform, Slán go fóill.